Today I've got a new request from my friend Jesse, and this time we're going to work on Genesee Bottling Works in Utica, New York. So let's get going on this episode of Antique Bottle Stories. So my initial research brought me to a couple different places. There's a Genesee Bottling Works in Utica, New York, as well as Rochester, which is about 2 hours away from Utica. And I'm not positive, but I don't think that they work together. And then there's one in Indiana. And these bottles are all from the Indiana bottling plant. And they have a pretty distinct look to them. So our story is about a guy named Frank Basile. He went by Frank throughout all of my research, and then I was surprised to find out that his name was actually Jerry. He was mentioned in his obituary as Jerry. It threw me off, and I thought I had the wrong guy. Anyways, he was born in 1888 in Italy. And there's some interesting things here in this 1920 census before he got into the bottling industry. It shows Frank and his wife Nellie, and at this point no children. He's 31. And it says he immigrated in 1900, so he was 12. It says his current status is alien. This also says that he speaks Italian. And it also says that he can't read or write, but his wife can. He's a laborer in a cotton mill. She's a machine operator at a knitting mill. I just thought those were some interesting facts to get started. 1928 is the first time that I find them in the city directory. So they would have started the business late 1927 or possibly early 1928. Here's where I've got the names, Frank Basile and Nicholas Bell. 414 Coventry Avenue. So let's go see if we can find it. Google Maps brings me here to this corner lot. Now it's a bank parking lot. That's a bummer. In 1929, we see them both here, but I don't do a lot of research on Nick Bell because we see here in 1932 that Nick is out and a new partner, James Giacovelli, is in. Let's also see where Frank lives. It says 709 3rd Avenue. Well, this doesn't exist anymore either. It would be this empty lot. Another bummer. Also, in 1932, an old Google book, it's a directory of New York State manufacturers. It says that they manufacture carbonated beverages, but so does the one in Rochester. Judging by the bottle samples online and the pictures that Jesse sent me, now forgive me, but I can't tell the difference between the Rochester bottles and the Utica bottles. They made ginger ale, ginger beer, and a variety of beverages and a variety of bottles. And I do notice that some of the bottles have this red mountain background, but I haven't figured out which factory they belong to. Now here's one that says Rochester on it, but it doesn't have that mountain on it. In 1933, I don't think this affects our story much, but the Genesee plant in Rochester is suing a factory called Genesee Brewing Company. And it took me a second to understand what the heck was going on here, but so there's a Genesee Bottling Company and a Genesee Brewing Company in Rochester. The bottling company is suing the brewing company for using the name Genesee. So the only reason I threw that in this story is just to show that there's actually 2 other Genesee companies nearby that are creating bottles. I happened to find that the bottling company in Rochester started roughly about the same time as our one in Utica, possibly slightly earlier. I've never seen anything that says that they are working together, so I think they are separate entities. 1935 directory, Frank and James have been partners now for about 3 years. They've been in business for about 7 or 8 years now. 3 years later, it's just Frank running it, and he's been in business now for about 10 years. There's a different address listed here, 906 3rd Avenue. It turns out that this is where Frank lives. He lives down the road from where he used to live, and this place is still standing. 1938 is the last city directory that Ancestry has. 1938, the Utica plant is in the paper. A burglar, I guess he didn't get very much, tried opening a safe without much luck, so he went upstairs to an office, he drank a lime soda, and then he managed to get about 50 pennies for his trouble. 1940 census, Frank is now 52. He's still proprietor of the bottling works. 1946 as a mention in the paper, so we're about 20 years into business now. 1947, another mention in the paper, someone who's employed at the factory is getting married, a Mr. Bushy. 1953, Frank dies at age 65, or should I say Jerry. It says he had a heart ailment. It says he became associated with the original Freeman Bottling Company and in 1927 opened Genesee Bottling Company. It says he was a member of the Independent Order of Foresters and a member of the New York State Bottlers Association. His wife died 3 years later. I never saw that they had any kids. After that, there's no mention of his name or his business in the papers. They just disappear. So I can only assume everything was sold off. I thought it would be interesting to mention that while searching Frank Basile in New York papers, a guy comes up in Brooklyn, and this particular article says that this guy is denied bail on his third murder charge. He's about 20 years younger than our Frank, but he popped up a few times for stealing or just causing trouble, and I thought, I wonder if our Frank knew that there was another Frank Basile out there doing this kinds of stuff, or if they're related. Here's one more piece that I thought was interesting. There's just a list here of different bottlers in 1921. It might be helpful to someone somewhere, or it might be helpful to me someday. Here's a Genesee Utica crate. It was weird to me how many websites I found this exact picture on, all trying to sell it. So this business was open from 1927 to 1953. That's 26 years. That's not bad for a small business. And that is going to do it for today's story. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching.